The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, "Grant me justice against my opponent." For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, "Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming." And the Lord said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" Gospel of the Lord. In Jesus' parable about prayer, he is connecting it immediately to the preceding parables of the 10 lepers and other sayings from chapter 17. Luke intends for us to keep this parable linked with the preceding sections. The disciples' prayer of "Thy kingdom come" is a persistent one and is to be used continually with the confidence that God will never be one who ceases to answer prayer. But Jesus does seem to ask the question, how long can faith endure? How long will people continue? And when I come back, will there still be faith? In no way are we to equate the judge of the parable with God. Jesus is simply saying that even an earthly judge will answer petitions if they are persisted and presented long enough and with determination. If you will notice, Jesus tells us that God, quote, will quickly grant justice, unquote. Jesus is telling us that God is much better than a human judge. And like Habakkuk says, he will not tarry. Still, it does sometimes seem to us that prayers are answered slowly. Well, especially when you're in trouble. It seems like I need the answer right now, and it seems to take a long time. In our thinking, and according to our timeline, it is never as immediate as we would hope. And so the widow in the parable is the very model of prayer. She has a hopeful faith and a tenacious faith at that. So this is how the widow is exemplifying the idea of prayer to include the entire life of the believer in our own crying out for justice in a world that is full of corrupt magistrates and legal figures. In the parable, the judge seems to be serving his own interests or even the interest of blind justice, but the judge's idea of justice falls far, far short of God's view of justice. We only need to look back into the Hebrew scriptures to find God's notion of justice. Indeed, God's idea of justice is tilted in favor of the orphan, the widow, the foreigner, as we can see in places like Leviticus 19, Leviticus 23, and Deuteronomy 24. But let's have a look at verse 5, which the New Revised Standard Version renders as, quote, "so that she may not wear me out by continually coming." This is actually a shortcoming in the translation, which the Greek actually renders as "so that she will not keep coming and end up doing violence to me." Or "doing violence to me" can also be rendered as "so she won't keep coming to me and slap me in the face." The whole point is, according to the social norms of the time, that she was expected to accept the ruling of the judge and walk away from it. But she refuses to accept that judgment, and she keeps coming back. The judge is astonished at her persistence. The persistent widow becomes the very idea of faithfulness in prayer. She doesn't keep herself limited to the norms and expectations of society and of the period in which she lives. She's so convinced of the faithfulness of justice that she will not give up until she receives what she knows is due her. This is the very same faithfulness that was exemplified by the Samaritan leper that we talked about last week, who did as he was told and finding himself to be healed, returned to Jesus in gratitude. His faith made him whole, Jesus said. And that was the foundation of his life of gratitude. But this parable is about tenacity and faithfulness of prayer. But we must ask ourselves, what is the point of prayer? Is prayer only petition? Is it only asking for requests? Is it only give me something or protect me from something or do this for me? This is something more. C.S. Lewis said, I don't pray to change God or to change God's mind. I pray to change me. Oh, now we're on to something. Lewis was saying that he used prayer to get himself into alignment with whatever answer God may give to this or that petition. Yes, we give our request to God, but Jesus also tells us in another place that God knows our needs before we even ask. Connecting these two statements then would lead us to the conclusion that petition or request is actually a very small part of prayer. And the greater part of prayer should be the prayer that Jesus prayed in the garden, not my will, but your will be done. Our praying should be to put ourselves in line with God's will. In other words, God, change me to be in tune with your will, with whatever answer you may give me. Most of the time, my prayers are something like, Lord, I know that you're going to do what you're going to do, but if you're open to suggestions. And then there's the large section of our prayers, which should be centered on gratitude. In fact, I think that most of my prayer is centered around that. Thank you, Lord, that I woke up this morning. Thank you for the food. Thank you for our health. Thank you for my beautiful, loving bride. But prayer is more than just when we sit at the supper table or stand in church or kneel beside our beds. The letter to Timothy counsels us to pray without ceasing. That sounds a little ridiculous, to be continually in prayer. And it is, if our only prayer is when we sit, kneel, or stand in formal prayer. Probably my favorite statement on prayer outside of the Bible is from Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk. And I think he was actually quoting somebody, but still, it was from him that I heard it. He said, the person who prays only when he prays doesn't pray at all. Well, okay, that sounds like a little bit of Zen word fog there, but what he means, of course, is exactly what I said. If our prayers are limited to the formal prayers that we just talked about, then we've missed out on what prayer truly is. And that is an open communication with God. Here I am praying. I light a lamp, a candle. I open a book. I stand in front of an altar or an image. I say the sacred words. Then I finish and go about my business, of which everyone has so much. Going about my day, someone calls me and they report news that doesn't make me happy at all. And I may be accustomed in such places to lose my temper, say something completely unnecessary on the phone, say something completely unnecessary even to myself when the call is over, and so on. The situation is familiar, but in the spirit of prayerfulness, it would be good if I met the news with patience and breathing the name of God. That is to say, I prayerfully meet unpleasant information. It's hard, but it is Christianity. And to pray before the image to soon then give vent to my selfish desires is all too common, but all too far from the truth of what prayer really is. This means that I prayed only when I prayed, but then departed from prayer and acted in my own non-prayerful spirit. True prayer means to be in constant gratitude and devotion. I can be thankful to God without saying thanks. I can express my gratitude in the grateful way I treat others. I can pray for justice by serving justice and acting justly. I can seek to be in God's will by acting according to God's will, as described to us by the prophet Micah in Micah 6:8. He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Walking in gratitude, walking in justice, walking in kindness and humbly before our God, that is the way of prayerfulness. That is what we are to do without ceasing. And thank God for it.